Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. What's up, guys? For today's video, I'm going to be doing another player versus player comparison. Today it's going to be Justin Herbert versus Russell Wilson. I'm going to break down their 2019 season, 2020 season, go through their 2021 outlook, and then talk about which player I like more. And the point of this is not just for me to tell you guys who you should be picking, it's for me to present all the information to give you guys all the info you need to make the best decisions for your team that you guys feel comfortable with. To start off this video, I just want to let you guys know where each player is being selected. So right now, Justin Herbert is going as QB6 and Russell Wilson is going at QB7. They're actually going back to back in the overall rankings. So they're both going around pick 70. So they're basically as close as you could possibly be, which is why I chose these two players specifically to break down. Let's get started with the 2019 season. Justin Herbert was playing in his senior year at Oregon, and Russell Wilson finished tied for 5th in points per game. I'm going to talk about Justin Herbert's season first. He threw for 3,471 yards and 32 touchdowns with 7 interceptions, had a 66.8% completion percentage, and added 4 rushing touchdowns. Justin Herbert was viewed by most as the third best quarterback in his draft class behind Joe Burrow and Tua. And Justin Herbert really wasn't getting much respect in the fantasy community. In dynasty drafts, he was even falling towards the end of the first round in superflex leagues, maybe even going to the second round, which is just pretty criminally underrated. Just for a guy who's going top 10 at the quarterback position, you expect them to be picked, mid-first, late-first at the absolute latest. But he was a guy that was getting faded by a lot of fantasy experts. And so that just kind of shows you how underrated he was going into this season. And then for Russell Wilson, he put together an all-around solid season. He threw for 4,110 yards and 31 passing touchdowns. And then he added 342 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. However, in a concerning new trend with Russell Wilson, he totally fell off towards the end of the season. So from weeks 1 through 9, Russ was on fire. He was averaging 24.9 points per game, but then from week 10 to 17, he fell all the way down to 14.9. So that's a 10-point difference from week 1 through 9 and then 10 through 17. And those games at the end of the year are the ones where you need him playing at his best. That's where you're making your playoff push, and then that's also where you're playing in your playoff games. And so if Russ was struggling there, it really just hurt your chances of winning the championship. Moving on to the 2020 season, we had Justin Herbert as a rookie finish number 8 in points per game, and then Russ was right in front of him, finishing at number 7 in points per game. Justin Herbert put together one of the best rookie quarterback seasons we've ever seen. He threw for 4,336 yards and 31 touchdowns, and then added 234 rush yards and 5 rushing touchdowns in just 15 games. Remember, he didn't play week 1 because Tyrod Taylor was a starter, and then the guy stabbed him and punctured his lung, which is the only reason why Justin Herbert started playing so early. And even though Justin Herbert doesn't run the ball as much as some of these other more mobile quarterbacks, he's not going to have close to the amount of carries as Wilson or Lamar or Kyler or even Josh Allen, but he was number 5 in red zone carries, so he had more rushing touchdowns than Russ and even some of the other more mobile quarterbacks, despite having way less rush yards. But it makes sense because they're really using him in the run game, or he's scrambling in the red zone, which just gives him a higher touchdown upside. And it also shows that those touchdowns weren't fluky. He was really choosing to use his rushing ability when he was close to the goal line. Looking at Russell Wilson's 2020, his total season numbers were pretty solid. He threw for 4,212 passing yards and 40 touchdowns, and then he added 513 rush yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Those rushing touchdowns are the point I just made. So Herbert had almost half the rush yards as Wilson, but still had 3 more touchdowns. And it's just because Wilson was using his rushing ability all over the field, where Herbert was focusing it more in the red zone. But like I mentioned earlier, Wilson once again fell off towards the end of the season. He averaged 28.5 points per game in the first 8 games of the season. This was when the Russ MVP hype train was going. They were letting him cook. He was just balling out every week, but then he just totally fell flat again. In the last 8 games of the season, he fell to 16.4 points per game And I mean, that's just a huge blow to your team. If you have a quarterback that you think is basically best in the league for fantasy, and then they turn into like a bottom 15 quarterback, that's just pretty brutal for your roster. Now we're on to their 2021 outlook. And for Herbert, I just don't think there's any reason to think that he doesn't improve on his 2020 season. His situation has only improved from that 2020 team. His protection rate was ranked 34 in the NFL, so he put up those numbers while getting no help from the O-line and as a rookie with no training camp, limited offseason. The whole thing is just very impressive. But then also this offseason, the Chargers went out and they totally upgraded their O-line. New center, new left guard in free agency, Corey Linsley and Matt Feiler. And then in the draft, they took the consensus number 2 tackle in Rashawn Slater. So just a complete overhaul, completely upgraded that offensive line, and that should only help Justin Herbert moving forward. Looking at Russell Wilson in 2021, I just don't really see the path to him improving on that 2020 season unless it's just like a marginal difference. The Seahawks haven't really made any improvements on the offensive line. I know it was something that Russ wanted to see, but it really didn't come to fruition. They did bring in guys like Gerald Everett and draft Dwayne Eskridge, but I'm not really confident that those additions are going to counteract what I think is going to be a change in their game script in 2021. I think they're going to go much more run heavy to take the pressure off of Russell Wilson, and so I just don't really think those new weapons are going to elevate him much more than what he did last year. So if I was up on the clock choosing between Justin Herbert or Russell Wilson, even though they're both very close in my rankings, I'll likely be picking Herbert 9 out of 10 times. They only finished with a 0.3 points per game difference last year, and since 2020, Herbert has a year of NFL experience and a completely revamped offensive line compared to Russell Wilson, who just really hasn't had anything happen that would make you think he takes a big leap in 2021. So it's not even that I think Wilson regresses a ton from his 2020 stats. It's more just that I think Herbert is going to continue to grow and produce more as he gets more experience, better offense around him. And so Herbert is going to be the guy that I'd be going with at this slot. All right, so that is going to wrap up my Justin Herbert versus Russell Wilson breakdown. If you guys enjoyed the video, please think about leaving a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And also, let me know down in the comment section, who are you guys going to be drafting? Is it Justin Herbert or Russell Wilson? And let me know your reasoning. I'll make sure to get back to you. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.